Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of the Lightning Struck Path. I'm sitting here this morning, early morning in Crestone, Colorado, looking out at the beautiful mountain, the sacred mountain of Creston Stone, that contains interdimensionally the sacred On, Arc, and the sanctuary of those, enclave of those. And feeling very blessed. I have my new little kitty right at my shoulder. He's going to listen in. Oh, and the deer walking down their deer path right in front of me, right here, as I look out the sliding glass doors, sitting here before my computer. And today we're going to talk about, oh, that was my kitty, he sneezed. Today we're going to talk about, I just had a brain wipe there. We're going to talk about the Ascended Isle of Ruta, the Atlantean Ascended Isle of Ruta. So how does this figure in with what we talked about in the last part of this series, the Lightning Struck Path? That was Mars, the moon, ancient structures there, civilizations of past there, and certain enclaves of present by many, many different types of beings. Well, not many, but several types of beings. One of them whom is our kindred star souls. So why Ruta now? Well, because Ruta has a very strong connection to what is on Mars and what is on the moon in regard to what I'm calling our kindred, the ultra beings that are our true soul, spirit, genetic kindred. And I'm not speaking of all the tinkering by the Anunnaki. I'm talking about the pure energy of divine impetus that we share with certain galactic races. And it is our kindred that brings us to the font of true universal recognition. So it's not a racist thing like, oh, we can only, be or communicate with those who we're related to, our race, because there are other races out there, and they're not all malevolent, for sure. But you see, we're involved in a process here, a process of assimilating our nutrients of true beingness. And that comes through the original creatrix matrix that we sprung forth from. And until we unite with that in completion, we can't really accept wholeheartedly any other of the stellar races that are not related to us. And we can also see that this holographic universe is a product of these star kindred races. So when we work with other races, other beings that are not human-like at all, then we're working with, or we're communing with, interacting with beings that are not of this holographic universe. That's nothing wrong with that. But we haven't got it together in our own hologram, So, or hologram, I'm not sure which word to use, hologram, I guess. Graph is more picture. So we haven't got it together, our own hologram. So that's where we need to start, and that's where we need to work. So our kindred are helping us to do that. And here we are on planet Earth that seems to be way out in the boondoggies. I mean, we don't seem to be very communicative with anyone, do we? I mean, yes, we have our channels, our psychics, our intuitions individually. We can see them flying around in the sky, but we don't know who's who in the zoo up there. But we feel rather disconnected. We know it's all going on, but Who left us in the back seat, you know? Well, we did. We placed ourselves there. But I don't want to go down that path. The path I want to go down today is understanding the connection that we do have with our kindred, with this earth and the timelines that are in place. That's why I'm calling this a lightning struck path, because it's a very specific path of energetic connection. And it's actually somewhat electrical in being. It has its magnetic elements too, but it has that fiery electrical presence that gives us epiphanies, that gives us instant feelings of spontaneity and spirit that we find in our lives, that bring us and lift us up far beyond the mundane. Or in some senses, actually shows us that within the mundane, there are those lightning presence moments that incorporate our mundaneness, and we see it as beauty. Because the minute we judge something, it becomes mundane. So, okay, that's my little preface. So now I'm going to start talking about and reading to you a little bit about Ruta. Now, how did Ruta come upon my horizon? Well, it was probably, I'm trying to think how early on it would have been. And then probably in the late 80s, early 90s. Now, actually, I can tell you exactly. It's going to be 1991, because this is when I wrote about it in the Merlin Chronicles, which was originally just part of Temple Doors. Then I kind of put the two issues together and created the Merlin Chronicles. But so I was writing about Merlin, and I was receiving from Thoth, but I was also doing a little research on my own, of course. In those days, again, no internet, so I had to look at books and things. I wasn't doing much, but I picked up a book here and there. And one of the books I picked up was The Secret Tradition in Arthurian Legends by Gareth Knight. This is a really cool book, by the way. I don't have it anymore, but I did it one time. And I'm going to quote to you directly from this. Now, this is where I first heard of Ruta, not from Thoth, but from Gareth Knight. But there was only one mention of it. In this one mention, I handed to Thoth, and Thoth said, aha, and gave me all that I've written about Ruta since. The ascended reality, everything about it has come from Thoth, except what I'm going to read to you here in this one excerpt. And I think it's a very important excerpt. So here we go. And this is from The Secret Tradition in Arthurian Legend by Gareth Knight. The secrets of the sea power are among the traditional lost secrets of Atlantis, pertaining not so much to the well-known Sun Temple priesthood of the sacred mountain as to the older center based upon the Isle of Ruta, the island of Ruta. In his role, Merlin brought the secret teachings of doomed Atlantis at the end of its phase to the new world of Europe, and founded first the Hibernian mysteries, the vestiges of which come down to us in the mythology of Ireland. His mandate came from a great primordial being who is traditionally called Narada. No, let me say that right now. Narada. Yes, it is. Narada. It was he who brought through to the consciousness of humanity as a guiding light the great solar pattern of a central life, generating points surrounding by 7 circles of force. This was the pattern of the great Sun Temple of Atlantis on the island of Ruta, and the spiritual pattern of civilization upon which the Atlantean human epoch was built. At the end of the Atlantean epoch, Merlin was charged to bring to the new root race a more subtle and complex form of the plan. This pattern was that of the round table, With the round table, stellar forces and patterns are taken into account, for it is indeed a form of zodiac. This teaching emanates from a cosmic center of force that is concerned with the universal evolution of consciousness as opposed to comparatively localized solar or planetary evolution. Now, I'm going to pause just for a moment because really what he's talking about here, a form of zodiac that is more the cosmic center of force concerned with universal rather than the local. See, that would be let me say it right now, Mazaloth. The Mazzaroth is the 12 zodiacal signs as we have it now, and possibly including the one I can't say that starts with an O. I'm afraid to say it because I know I'm going to really butcher it, but it's Ophiuchus or Ophiuchus or something like that. But anyway, in the 13th heaven, which Ophiuchus allows us to enter into, we have the Mazaloth. So that's what he's referring to there as the universal evolution. For purposes of earth consciousness, this source of influence may be thought of as emanating from what appears to us to be the 7 stars of the constellation of the Great Bear. Now, aren't the 7 stars in the constellation of the Great Bear? Isn't that the Pleiades? I think so. We're going to hold that for judgment for a moment because I'm not positive, but I think that's what he's referring to. We should also mention in passing a further pattern, also of stellar origin, but using as a transforming agent for reception by human consciousness on Earth, the inner forces of the planet Venus. This formula, mediated by Melchizedek, is the formula of the Rose Cross. Well, now this particular that I just quoted to you here, this is really loaded with a lot of things that I'd already written about pertaining to all of this. Of course, Venus is the guardian planet of Earth. For those of, I say of course, for those of you who follow my work, you know that, that's what Thoth says, and that the Earth and Venus, energetically speaking, are not of the solar system and will return to the blue star Rigel at a certain point in time. Well, when the ascension occurs, the whole planetary ascension. And then Melchizedek is the being that came to Earth to establish the heaven houses in Lemuria, Mu, and from his heritage came the Grail family, the family that was eventually became the family of Yeshua, Jesus. So it's the Christed family. And Melchizedek was overlighted by Thoth. I say overlighted, one of the layers of the soul layers. It's kind of hard to, what words to use, but overlighted is a good one, I think, because it was not the root soul, but it was overlighted by Thoth. And Merlin was overlighted by Thoth. In other words, one of the layers, soul layers, was Thoth, but not the root soul. So you can see Thoth kind of in a lot of this here. But Ruta, back to Ruta. Originally, according to Thoth, Ruta was part of the whole continent of Atlantis. As things started breaking up, because remember, there wasn't just one big bang and then Atlantis was gone. That was the time tsunami that finished it off. But there were a lot of other things during time that broke it up into different pieces. And one of those was, very early on, the part of Atlantis that was called Ruta, like a county or something, became an island. And it's kind of interesting that all of Ruta would break off and become an island. Well, I'm sure it lost a few pieces, but basically that's what happened. It just separated and became an island, but very close to the main continent or other islands that composed Atlantis at that time. And so when it was the seat of the true spiritual heritage of the Grail family. It was, you could almost call it the Melchizedekian island, because that whole area that was eventually originally part of the Atlantean continent and broke off from it, that whole area was populated, claimed, I don't know how they did things in those days, but by the Grail families. And again, we need to look at it from the standpoint of that time. Because if we look at it from our perspective, we might say, oh, a clique, an elite, Grail family, yeah, sure. But that's not what it was about in those days. We have distorted the original concepts, and they're no longer necessary to the degree they were then either. What was necessary then was this: the pure, what they called they didn't call it pure gem in those days. I'm trying to think. Pure body, I believe they call it, the essence of the pure body, which was originally brought down from the lotus reality, the higher dimensional reality of Earth, into the reality of Earth, the more physical Earth. That DNA was sacrosanct, and it needed to be kept pure. That doesn't mean not intermarrying, because there wasn't anybody to intermarry with. It was it. That was all there was. But what happened was that DNA started to deteriorate, I guess you could call it. A lot of it had to do with the radiation of the planet, and there were other factors involved. Now, the pure DNA was not just one look, like white or whatever. There were a lot of different looks that came out of, I'm calling them looks, races is almost a limiting term. There are a lot of different features and skin tones and eye colors, and there were all kinds of things that came out of that pure form. So we're not talking about, keeping everybody lily white and blonde and blue-eyed. We're not talking about that at all. We're talking about keeping the DNA from deteriorating to the point they can no longer receive fully its light inscription. So that needs to be understood, because when we're looking at Ruta, we have to understand the principles it was founded upon, which would not apply today. We couldn't get that back by stopping intermarriage. I mean, that wouldn't work at all, because every race on this planet has the divine DNA. But it's just gotten sort of messed up, not because of intermarrying, but because it's got messed up for a lot of reasons. And so here we are back in Atlantis. And the Atlanteans have already had their trip in Mu, and they're branching out because Mu is getting a little wobbly. Okay, so they move over to Atlantis. And when I say wobbly, I'm not just talking about cataclysms and such. What do you think causes cataclysms? It's consciousness. And Mu, which was really the font of the purest consciousness you can imagine, is starting to break down. Not become evil, but to break down. Things move. This is entropy. We're in a realm of entropy here. And entropy is not just about physical matter breaking down. It's about consciousness breaking down. When it becomes adhered to a particular place, and it becomes a sphere of consciousness. That sphere of consciousness, like a cell, goes through its lifespan. Then it breaks down, and little pieces of it migrate somewhere else and create a new colony. And then that will eventually break down. Now, the reason for that is because entropy is a consciousness factor. It's not a physical earth factor. That follows suit. Once the consciousness starts breaking down, the physicality starts breaking down. Now, when we get to the new earth, that's not going to happen, because we will be in a world system 2. We'll still have duality, but a higher, a finer, subtler level of it that we can't even imagine. When we think of duality, we go, ooh, duality. But duality is not a bad thing. It's just that we're not doing it right down here. So, and eventually, of course, you get to where you are non-dual, but the next stage in the new earth star is a very subtle level of duality that's beautiful and fine and wonderful. But here, we're in entropy. That's why our bodies decay and everything just goes down the hole. Has been popularly stated lately by certain people on the net. Anyway, so where was I? I tend to go off on little tangents here. So we have the Atlanteans establishing Ruta, the area of Ruta in Atlantis. They came directly over, right over from Mu, while Mu was still active, to Atlantis to create this section. And they were really practically the first ones in Atlantis. There were little tiny settlements because, see, Atlantis popped up later. It wasn't even there in the ocean when Mu first developed. And then, oops, there's a little bit of Atlantis over there. And the North American continent and all of that was, there were migrations there too. Well, that's a whole nother story. I'm not going to go there. There's just too much to talk about. So let me stick on this one topic. So anyway, they got to Atlantis and they said, okay, we're going to set up our area here. And as they did so, they didn't have to defend it or protect it. It wasn't in those days. There wasn't anything like that. There was an understanding and energy coherency between people. And it was like the other people said, yes, that's a good idea, because if they do that, then we can keep the flow of this pure energy, pure body active in our beings. They weren't doing it just for themselves. They were doing it for the whole planet, whatever was in the planet, on the planet. So it was fine with everybody that Ruta set up its shop there, and they weren't just living there, they were working there. They were activating energies there. And this is what we call, I'm using the term grail because those is saying, yeah, let's use that because people can understand it better from the context of the grail lineages and legends and history to understand where all this originated. So we're going to call it grail family. So or families, the grail families established their headquarters there, and they started working, doing their sacred work, which was for the entire planet. We'll get a little into that more later, but I want to establish how they got there and what happened. So I believe that it was ordained that Ruta break off from Atlantis as an island when the rest of Atlantis started getting a little wobbly. And more than wobbly. Now, Atlantis was up to mischief at times. There were beings, people in Atlantis that came from the planet Atlantis. Again, that's just a name that Thoth gave it so we can recognize the connection. That they blew up their own planet, and so then they get over on this little continent that we're calling Atlantis here, and they start messing around there too. Now, that doesn't mean that they're evil or bad, but they just didn't get it right the first time, and they weren't getting it right the second time. But Ruta decided, let's make ourselves an island here. And I believe that when Ruta separated from the continent, it did so in a way that what I'm receiving on this actually right now, that was not catastrophic in nature. There were a lot of catastrophic things going on in Atlantis toward the end. But I believe that when Ruta separated and scooched itself over and made itself a little boundary so that it had some ocean between it and Atlantis, not much, but some, that this happened in a very orchestrated manner that didn't cause any harm to anyone. And so then we had the island of Ruta. And that at that point, the rest of Atlantis kind of went, well, some people in the other areas of Atlantis were very helpful. They were very focused on Ruta and, gave their spiritual energy to it. Other people on Atlantis went, that's their business. I can't even remember that. That's too long ago, why they were ever there in the first place. They're just sort of this little secret order. It's okay, no problem, but I don't really want to be involved. And those Atlanteans, the planet Atlanteans, they were the ones that just couldn't get with the program of spiritual connection. Ow, ooh, excuse me. My kitty just swatted my ear. He didn't want to get with the program either. You little stinker. Ouch, he pierced my ear at another place. Okay, sorry about that. I don't want to stop this. I'm on a roll here. So at that point, I'm going to have to do something about this kitten. He's decided to just sabotage me. Get on the floor and play. Go on. Ruta really got into its power because it was kind of difficult for it to operate as being a part of the continent. And even though the separation wasn't very wide, it was a separation. It was an energetic separation. And at that point, they put a shield around them, not a shield to protect them so much as to organize them and to keep, well, certain interferences from penetrating. So by the time it became an island, you couldn't just say, oh, well, let's just take a vacation over to Ruta and see what's happening. You weren't able to get into Ruta unless you were invited at that point in time, even though they hadn't ascended yet. That was the situation, and it was necessary because of all the stuff that was coming down on the rest of Atlantis. Some of it was good, but a lot of it was not. And, you know, they had the experimentations that Edward Casey talks about on one of the islands where they were mixing humans and animals and getting all kinds of weird stuff going on. And, you know, it was not good. This was the second sort of blast from the Anunnaki, but they weren't, I don't know how much the Anunnaki beings really had anything to do with that. That was the other ones that, I mean, the Atlantean ones that were doing that. So anyway, this was the reason they kind of sealed themselves off in a way. But they were still working for the whole planet. You know, they just had to have some space to do it and to keep out vibrations, energies that were not beneficial to that. So what you're looking at right here is a sketch done by William Buehler many years ago, in 1991, I believe. And it represents the actual pylon statue of Melchizedek on the Isle of Ruta at the Temple of the Northern Door. And this still stands today in the Ascended Ruta. Now, it's not an exact image, but it's very, very close. And in the center, there's a breastplate. Now, the way the breastplate is aligned here has the Rochelle with the Areopax type center to it. And I can't tell you that the exact image of the breastplate in Ruta looks exactly like this, but it's very close. It gives the same similitude. It's the same energy frequency. So as you're looking at this, I'm going to read from issue 3491 of Temple Doors. The figure that you're seeing here, the actual image stands 50 cubits tall, engraved in the pylon of Asherim at the Temple of the Northern Door on the Atlantean holy isle of Ruta. This island is in our time frame now resting under the Atlantic Ocean, but it also resides in an interdimensional state. In other words, there's a Ruta that sank. There's rocks and stones and pebbles that sank, but the actual Ruta proclaimed all its presence and moved into an ascended state. So all that's left under the ocean are rocks and stones and pebbles. I don't think you could find actual structures and building remnants of Ruta under the ocean. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so, because it just literally took all that with it. It left some dross, you know. That's all it did, was leave some dross behind. Maybe a cup or a spoon or something, I don't know. But most of it went right upstairs. Okay. So it says, but it also resides as in an interdimensional state like Avalon, accessible through portals or windows between dimensions. The Lord Melchizedek image represents a multiple activation of the Melchizedek consciousness throughout all aspects of its realization. William Buer, the major facilitator for then, at this time, writing this, was the Shekinah Grove Matrix. And he still has his synergy group here in Crestone, but he doesn't, I don't believe, call it that. Drew this image using principles supplied him by Thoth through me, along with his own innate understanding of symbology. He did not realize that he was indeed recreating an actual ancient future image. So when he drew this, he didn't really realize that he was actually drawing such a close replica of the statue. I'm sorry, I know you're hearing little kitty claws climbing around. Hope it doesn't bother you, because there's not much I can do about it. If I close it out, I'll have more trouble. The Lord Melchizedek image represents a multiple activation of the Melchizedek consciousness throughout all aspects of its realization. I said that, didn't I? Yes. Okay, we'll go on. When the sun, inside of Thoth and chariot of the sun, that's his Merkaba, with the insight of them, let us examine the image further. William was correct in seeing the breastplate unfolded as an apron. His notation in this drawing is breastplate 1/2 times 1 cubit, white linen folded. White linen, white cleansing fire, serpent's hole, noble. From Thoth, the breastplate overlays the templates of the Imstra, light molecule, the Metatronic fulcrum, the dynamic of the fearless flame, and the double-crescented Rachel, the Antarian conversion, and several other cosmetrics that have not yet been revealed through this source at the time of this writing here. Now, all of those things are really interesting, and we could go into them, but then this whole thing would just go on and on, so I'm not going to do that. But these are all dynamics that relate to the creational matrix that we live in, and they're very related. In other words, they show where and how we transform back into our pure gem state. The object being held by the being is the star rose, the rose mystica, which William defines as the central lotus, also a correct identification. It is within this star rose that the Aaron, AARON /ARIAN, rods of creation given unto Orion exist. Again, a whole nother topic. That's my problem with sharing these things, is that they're related to so much more information and more information and more information, because it's, over 50 years of work that I'm talking about here. A respondent of the star rose is the wheel of fire, which is representative of the chariot of the sun, Thoth Merkaba. While the star rose vibrates, and I don't have the wheel of fire here. Let's see. In the image, I had that above it, but the star rose still represents that as well. While the star rose vibrates at an outward motion of 12, the fire wheel vibrates at an outward motion of 13. The latter is the hypercalibration of the former, the lost harmonic of the 13th, accelerating the earth mandala from its present continuum through the Metatronic spiral to be received by its etheric double, the Numis Om. That's the Kyi'Ra star. Numis Om is the first level of it. And thus becoming, in that alchemical process, the new Earth star. The rose mystica, then, is the sacred flower of enlightenment, awaiting resurrection through the empowerment of the fire wheel. The radiating essence, the elixir of transformation contained as a nectar within the star rose, is the harmonic of the 7 miracles of light. Okay, a whole nother topic. You can actually go to my Spirit Mythos website, the archive website now, and type in some of these things and come up with them, I think. This streaming grace radiates from the constellation of Ursa Major. The 8th octave of the divine mantle is then received through the process of Isis quickening Osiris, Orion, to life. We are invited to enter the pavilion of the star rose, where the pylon of Lord Melchizedek stands at the entrance to the temple of the northern door, part of the Sun Temple complex. on the holy isle of Ruta. The pylon is composed of the largest fragment of the Grail Lapis meteor. Well, now that's interesting because it's probably the Chinamati. It resonates with the collective grace of the divine chalice, yet to receive its elixir. One must walk the labyrinth of the rose mystica, unraveling her true nature and confronting the dweller on the threshold. The path is given in the Rose Mystica Foundation principle. So I've written more on Ruta here and there, a lot here and there, but it's spread out through so many places, I don't even know where to find it. But I am going to talk to you a little bit more about it and how it relates to Mars, and especially Mars. I'm not so sure how much with the moon, but Mars for sure. And that is, there's a complex there, where the Sidonian area is, the face on Mars. That whole area was created originally and is still, to some degree, in the internal part of it, operated by the Syrian Sun Lords, or in cooperation with the Syrian Sun Lords. That guardian, the Telesakara, the capstone on the Eye of Ra. Okay, all of this is extremely symbolic, but let's go into it just a little bit, because this is what Ruta is really all about, is the connection between this earth, as we live it in this time continuum, with the capstone on the Eye of Ra. So in order to understand that, we need to look at that whole presentation. Now, I can only tell you what I know, or I think I know. And there's obviously a lot more to this than ever been revealed to me. But according to what I've received through the years, this universe, this holographic universe, had been created through a tear in what Thoth calls the Eye of Ra. It's a tear in the Orion Nebula. How this tear took place and why, I don't know. It's never been revealed to me. When I ask, it's just like, not yet. You're not, this is a vaster topic, not ready to know this yet. Maybe somebody else knows it, but I don't. So, but there is this tear. And this is how this universe, this holographic universe, was created, or through which it was created. And there is a capstone on it, not a real physical capstone, but a capstone. And we can see it as a pyramidal shape because energetically speaking, that's what it is. And this capstone was placed upon it by the lords, the star lords of Sirius. Now, Sirius has a lot of different beings associated with it, through it. They're all related, but they're different. And the ones that are operating the capstone are the lion-headed ones. In other words, they have cat-like physical features, at least in the face. They have more or less human bodies. They might be a little different. Never seen one, actually, all together. But the head is very feline-like, very lion-like. They're still, though, human kindred. We can have a lot of different variations and still have this kindred strain within us, the pure gem frequency. Now, I received this before I don't know if I ever knew about or I ever saw the pictures of the Sidonia complex, in which the face looks both human and lion-like. Here is the feline look about it, here in this image. And down here, they've put the two sides together and they actually call it the feline side of the face on Mars. What they've done is they put the feline side together, so you have a full feline face here. And there's more of a human face. Well, you can see it here. This is more human. It depends upon also the way the lighting focuses on it. So the face is essentially half human and half feline. And I never knew this when I received what I did about the lion-headed ones. Now, I can't say I never saw it. I don't remember, but I know that when I first saw the lion head, I went, oh my God. So obviously I had not been aware of it before the feline aspect of it, before I received what I did about the lion-headed ones. But I also received, before I saw the feline face, that Cydonia was their complex, or the place where beings worked with them, or whatever. So all of that was received before I saw this feline face and saw it as even people saying that. And that was like a major moment for me because, you know, everything I write is so far out. And I'm really a very logical person. I'm not, you know, I'm not given to flights of fancy. It sounds funny coming from me, but really I'm not. So when I get these things, I go, well, is there any evidence? Is there any proof? Is there anything I can hinge this on? A lot of times there isn't, of course, but many times there is. And this was one of them. So it helped me feel a little better about proclaiming that this complex was created by or with the intention of serving or working with the lion-headed ones, who are the guardians and activators, facilitators of the Telos Akara, which is the capstone on the Eye of Ra. It actually has another name too that Thoth has given it. I can't remember it right now. Here we have a fuller image, at least in part of the Cydonia complex, with the face over here. And right now it's looking sort of in its human form from this direction. And then, you know, partially revealed pyramid that's been somewhat destroyed here. And then these others over here. Now, where exactly the still operative part is, I don't know. I would say it's not in the one that's partially destroyed here, but it's deep under one of the pyramids. And possibly the pyramid it's deep under is not even visible here. I don't know, but it's in this complex. And they still have an operating level to it. And what they do there, I don't really know. But I do know that the Metatronic dweller skulls are projected there. So they serve, that part of the 72 dwellers serves a function with this complex. Now, actually, we did, I say we, my group that I had when I was in Austin, Texas, that I call the Isis Templars, and this was long before I ever became a Templar, a real Templar. We worked with the Cydonia complex, and I was trying to find where that material was in my issues. Well, I think I found something here. This is in issue 3492, 1992. And apparently this was when I first found out about the Martian Cydonia complex, or at least got to see clear images of it. Again, it seemed like the Stone Age. You know, there's no way to look at anything on an internet. So somebody sent me a video. Actually, I think it was, yeah, William Bueller sent me this video, and I had to send it on to somebody else. It was like a round robin. The only way we could share this was to package up this video and mail it off to the next person. How primitive. So anyway, I'm saying here in this issue, I'm going to read this here. I will say briefly that it contains this video, information and mathematical proof that correlates with much of what my sources have told me through the years. Understand that my sources did not give me this exact knowledge, but dramatically correlating information. The following are just a few of the more obvious synergistic points. excuse me. And so we start with number one, the mathematical revelation contained in the face on Mars and its attendant pyramids, which is revealed on the video by Richard Hoagland in his address at the UN in February 1992. I'm sure you can find this video on web now, like on YouTube. Several years ago, Thoth told me that Mars contained a great secret for the Earth, which would be revealed in the future. At the time, I knew about the face on Mars. Okay, I didn't know that I did or not. But this was widely publicized, so I never considered it having to do with the secret. I did not realize that he meant the secret to be within the face. The hypertetrahedron geometric that Hoagland uncovers within the Cydonia matrix, the Martian face and its pyramids, and its outbreaking point is the third dimension as witnessed on all planets, examples given, the spot on Jupiter and the Hawaiian volcano on Earth. These points Mr. Hoagland refers to again and again on the tape as signatures. As longtime readers of the Source Temple Doors will remember, my sources defined doctrine of signature as being the energetic insignia print of elemental wholes, i.e. the Earth as a sphere operating through the interdimensional realities. It is the doctrine of signature that maintains the continuity of its identity through time, space, and multiple dimensional realities. And this doctrine of signature is impressed within the planetary genius inside of the Earth, which is another topic. 3, when a computerized photograph on the Martian face is folded one side upon the other, it looks like the face of a lion. This is so striking, in fact, that the UN audience gasped when it was shown them on the screen. It appears dramatically to resemble Vincent from the TV series Beauty and the Beast. Here we find the face of the Syrian lion people, written about by Mary Hope. Within my knowledge of her work was given to, without my knowledge of her work, was given to me by Thoth. And Murray Hope talked about the lion people. I don't know if she actually said they were Syrian, I guess so. But I didn't know that when I brought my whole lion-headed thing through. I found that out later. It is the lion ones who orchestrate the Dweller crystal skulls dynamic and the Ark of the Covenant. So they're the ones that are keeping that register intact. They are also the thresholders of the Ren mystery, Ren le Chateau. Mr. Hoagland shows us that the hypertetrahedron reveals through its mathematics the proof that each sphere in space is a doorway to a hyperdimensional reality. This is, of course, something most New Age thinkers already know. My sources told me about the doorways in 1968 or 69 before I had ever heard of it elsewhere. Now, however, in front of our eyes on this videotape, it is demonstrated to be true. And then I state on page 27 in this double issue of Temple Doors, you will find a diagram, sorry about the page turn, of the barberry crop circle. This crop circle is the one Thoth and his Merkaba gave us to work with for an overlay with the Wrens dynamic. As they stated, that its geometrics reveal the sacred form also contained in the Temple of Jerusalem, the Ark of the Covenant, and the Wrens of France. So in the sacred on, in other words. Hoagland singled out this particular crop circle, dissecting it mathematically to reveal the sacred form in regard to the Cydonia matrix of Mars. He does this with the Avebury Mound also. Avebury was one of the major points on the Pentadove journey, where the crystal skull of Isis Sophia, the little skull that was representing that at the time, was taken to awaken the seals. Let me see if there's anything else I want to read you on this page. I think not. Okay. The odds of me finding what I was looking for next were pretty astronomical, and it just fell out right in front of my face. Divine guidance. So we're going to, I'm panting because I was digging through all these physical copies of my work. So this is 1993. And I'm going to read it. It's entitled Blue Lotus. On December 24th, 1993, the ISIS Templars, that was my group then in Austin, gathered to begin synergy work in earnest. Prior to this event, we had not done intensive interactive interplane visualization that bordered on, we had done, that bordered on, but were not complete synergies. We nevertheless feel we accomplished a great deal in this mode. However, Thoth has now given us a go-ahead to enter true synergy. Our Isis Templar, Sheena, was visiting from her new home in Phoenix, where she had entered one of the groups that Bill was facilitating. Well, not directly facilitating, but had a group going there, that was connected to him. So she was in effect carrying the seed into our midst from an ongoing synergy function. Our first session was far more high-powered than expected. We moved from a rhombic process into an outer level of the telosakara, opening a vault and effecting some calibrations within it. We all felt tremendous light and power around and through us. I have asked Thoth to give a basic explanation of what occurred and what was accomplished. He's saying that we entered old Earth matrix through the then active, in reference to the point of entry, Uhura temple complex of Atlantis. That was not on the Isle of Ruta. That was an experimental complex that is now under the ocean. Followed Bora, B-O-R-A-H, Earth level time explosion into ascended Ruta temple complex. In this mode, Templars were condensing iton particles of the lower Bora into free itons of higher Bora, meaning a loss of gravity within the itons. This was necessary for them to condition their light bodies in this way before entering telosakara. As they entered the telosakara from the Ruta threshold, they were received into the hall of transition, Tumukta. This long passageway was seen by the Templars, is duplicated in the Temple of the Lion, Giza, at Egypt, and the Temple of the Fire Being at Ruta, and at the City of the Lords, Mars. That's the Cydonia complex. In the Temple of the Universal Being, known symbolically also as the Temple of Man, for within the geometrics, or more aptly cosmetrics, of man-woman is found the Universal Being. So the Temple of the Universal Being is within the City of Lords and on Mars. And I'm receiving right now, hot off the press, that this Temple of the Universal Being is actually within the face. See, the face on Mars is actually just a cap of and underneath it is a whole complex within it. And in fact, recently, and I don't know where that video is now, they were able to get cameras close enough, from the images that are so great now compared to the ones they were then, to show that there is a tear in that face on the side, and you can see into it, and there's a complex in there. And I'm receiving now that actually the Temple of the Universal Being, well, that face is the Universal Being, and the temple is within it. So now, where was I? If you take the initials of the Temple of the Universal Being, TUB, the Sanskrit meaning of tub, TUB, is to impel toward completion, to stir, to create force that aligns. Tubla, Cain, the descendant of Cain, an incarnation of Thoth, is he who stirs the cauldron into completeness. The hall of Tub Muk Da is the point of stirring the Muk, stellar fire, in order to configure or bring together Da, Da. The Sun Lord, well, I didn't say what it was. Oh, to configure or bring together. That's what Da means. The Sun Lord, Lion, one of Sirius, who approached and anointed each of you, speaking to the Isis Templars, with the Sakrim, or encodings of the sacred, was Hepta Unuki. He is the inscriber of the Sakrim within the the telesakara. The inscription which you each received is a template within the cellular atomic level. Once the sakrim is encoded, your atoms will have the language of light mathematics to be able to itemize when the LP40 division of worlds on Earth occurs. Atoms convert into itons by metabolizing through rhombic fields stimulated by the change in etheric density. Thus, itons are atoms turned inside out. Now, I want to explain a little bit about this. He's not actually saying that, boom, all of a sudden we get all these cosmetrics, and so, okay, now we can ascend, no problem. That's not what he's saying here. And obviously, I didn't qualify it in this material, but this is what I'm receiving directly from him here. But what he's saying is that through this means that was touched into us at that time, we could develop that to help us to attain that factor within our DNA. We were given that seed. Well, what did we do with it? I don't think we did anything, actually. Shortly after that, I moved. Other things happened in my life. I certainly didn't cultivate it. So, you know, we're given a lot of things in life, not just through Thoth and this body of information, but in our lives through ultra sources. And we go, oh, isn't that interesting? Wow, that was great. And we move on to something else. And we don't incorporate it. We don't spend time with it. I'm very guilty of that on many occasions. So I'm just bringing that up there. Okay. When the Isis Templars turned the silver bar suspended within the first vault, a calibration was made within the telesakara on the Earth's planetary diachromy. The alteration was marginal but critical, as this adjustment will give the planet a deflection of capability when Jupiter influences begin to churn in the spring of 1994. It will keep in abeyance the most devastating effects of this energetic alignment. So just because we did that, this happened? I think that what he's saying here is that we contributed to that. Every one of us contributes in different ways. You know, there are people all over the planet that are doing work of this kind, you know, energetic work with the planet. Oh, we went over here and we did this, and so we affected that, and so this is happening because we did this. Well, I'm not marginalizing that, but I'm just saying that we have to recognize that it's part of a bigger picture of beings. It's part of an orchestration. But we were a part of that orchestration when we did this, and when many of you have done what you have done. And then in answer to a question, Thoth says, the Isis Templars did not present for this process. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not right. There's a word missing here, and I don't know what it is. The Isis Templars not present for this process will be, oh, okay. The Isis Templars that are not present for this process will be integrated before the next process within the telesakara vault. The Merkabas of all the Templars join to form the access pattern or mandala given specifically for the Isis Templars, which is the blue lotus. So this was all part of a process we were doing. But I wanted you to hear this about the telesakara's connection to the complex at Sedona, which Thoth is calling the city of the lords, and of course the temple of the universal being, which is within the face of Mars, which is connected to the temple of the fire being at Ruta, and the Giza complex in Egypt. So in conclusion, I kind of want to bring some of these pieces together here. First of all, there's just so much more to this than I've shared with you because it relates to other dynamics that I mentioned. And as I said, I just can't get into all of those dynamics in this one series, or we just go on and on and on. They require their own series. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's the aspect that I don't know. I know it's much faster than all the little bits and pieces that I've been given through the years. But let's look at the root of it. The root of it. Ruta, as the ascended reality, is the core germane. It's like, okay, how can I explain it? It's like when we had this time tsunami and Ruta ascended. It was planning this all along. It didn't create the time tsunami, but I mean, it knew, the beings there knew this would happen. That's why they prepared for it by becoming an island and then, creating an energy field that they nurtured. This energy field enabled them to ascend. Now, actually, I received at the time that they didn't know they'd ascended at first. And they actually didn't. Even though they'd prepared for it for so long, what happened was when this took place, a lot of the lower Akashic was wiped from their experience. The lower Akashic was wiped. So even though they were operating in the higher Akashic, it took them a while to reorient. But when they did, they went, oh, it's happened. Okay, we've been preparing for this. But they didn't know it right away in their time, their new allocated time frame. It had to have an adjustment period. I didn't realize that when I originally received that they didn't even know it had happened. I thought they were just clueless. But no, that wasn't the case. It was a transpositional period. So anyway, they'd planned for it. It was there, and now they'd gotten into the sync of it. They know what's happening, and so now they're moving into position to do the connection because what they're doing is they've moved to the very edge of the Eye of Ra, to the Atelosakara. And, I'm speaking in spatial terms when it's really not spatial. But I have to say it because it's energetically true. And so as that is where they are, what they're doing is they're acting as a go-between for the whole regeneration and the restructuring of our reality frame so that we can reorient back to the Rana time wave that we left and the Telosakara to keep all these frequencies in line and bring it together so that when we're in the pyramidus radius matrix, we can reform all these dimensions and be ready for the true ascensional dynamic. I know that's a mouthful, but there are stages to all of this. And we're talking about millennia of time, and we're talking about places where there wasn't any time, and we're also talking about another time. So there are a lot of things going on. Now, Ruta is our main frame for this experience, but there are other aspects that work with it, like this high Brazil that's spoken about in legend, and that's where the beings from the future are doing much the same thing as Ruta is, only they're doing it for their own specific orientation to our past so they can help the future and blah. There's this whole other thing going on. But Ruta is the main frame for what we're doing here and getting to where we're going. And so there's one other aspect I want to share with you that I received recently, and it's so new to me that I don't really entirely understand it. I'm sure there'll be more on it later, and I can share all of that. But right now, I'm just telling you this. A few months ago, I had an experience, vision, whatever you want to call it, where I was made aware that that there's another timeline that does not contain Ruta ascending. And this is the timeline that the Owl, the One World Legion, and their cronies of aliens would like us to embrace. Because if we do that, then we don't have the strong connection to this whole movement that will carry us through the ascension corridor. I'm not saying it would be impossible without it. Nothing is impossible. But it sure would put it off for a long, long time. So there is that other timeline. However, when Ruta ascended, it marked its spot. It literally put a staff of energy, shall we say, into the earth, into the planetary genius that said, here we are. This is the orientation position. And that orientation position is very strong. But there are beings, both off and on planet, humans and non-humans, who would like to see that shifted and are working to do so. I do not feel in this energy that I'm experiencing here that it's very probable that they will do that, but it is a factor. It is a factor in the whole picture. And how do they get hold of that and switch that timeline? Well, they diminish us. They diminish our doctrine of signature as far as they possibly can. That means they put chemtrails into us and GMOs and all other kinds of things to bring our system to a point where it's controllable, and they can facilitate a timeline change more easily because the earth is already moving into that direction by the types of pollutions that it is experiencing and the types of pollutions that are in the human body. Now that's a dark side, and I don't like to talk about dark stuff, but you know it's there. We need to recognize it, but we also need to recognize that we're dealing with immense powers of light here. This is not just some little speck of dust. Because when we look at the hologram of our universe, we are looking at a universe that is structured for us. It is our holographic universe. You see, it's not like all these worlds out there have their own holographic. I mean, we're all sharing one big holograph. We're not. Our universe is our universe. We share it with our kindred. But that's it. Any other sources that come in are coming in from another holographic universe. It doesn't matter if they came from, what is that one? Reptilius. I can't even say the names of them. Wherever. It doesn't matter. Oh, it's this star, that star, so they've got to be in our universe. No. Out there we're seeing stars. We're seeing it from our holographic field. But if you were on one of those stars way, way over there, and it wasn't a kindred star system, you would not be in this universe. You would be in their holographic universe. You would look and maybe you would see the Earth, but it would be different. So it's hard to wrap your mind around all of this, but this is why the Telesakara and the beings of Sirius orchestrate the universal Terran Orion, because it's our hologram. So all the beings that are in our holographic frame, this is our universe. See, so that's kind of the picture that I receive. And of course, there's this whole thing about, okay, I'm searching my brain for the word. Corbola, the city of the future that is atop what is now Masada, but of course it's not physically there in our time reality, it's our future. And they're working to help facilitate this. They're on the very cusp of the new earth. They're right there, but they're just their toes right in it. And they're working to facilitate this with the beings of Ruta. And all of this is going on. So there's a larger picture. But Ruta is an important part. And it is where that lightning path comes through. It's the strike of the lightning that allows us to move through all these expressions and energies in the way that we are doing it, which is right now the best way we have. So let me take a moment and see if there's anything else I want to include here before I conclude with this particular video. Well, I know there are other bits and pieces on Ruta throughout my material, but that would be a fruitless search right now. So, and I don't know that it's even worth looking up. They're just mentions here and there. So I'm going to conclude here, and I'm planning at least one, perhaps two, but I think just one more video, much shorter. This will be an activational video, and we're going to be entering the fire temple, the temple of the fire being on Ruta. So thank all of you for listening once again, and until next time.